Welcome to Shrink to Shrink, a psych view on the films with Dr. Colleen Mullen and...
No. What's that? We can't. That's not, it's not Dr. Colleen Mullen. Not today. Today, I brought along with me my mother. Mommy dearest. Come on in. Mother of mine, or Nancy Calkins. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Courtney Calkins. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. You know, this forces us that we just have to sit down and look at each other and talk for an hour. That never happens.
No, that does not ever happen. That's really a new thing.
We text, but you know.
Yeah, right. Like, I'll be at your house at 2.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. No, we didn't say we text a lot, but no. There's more that. Just because you're my mom is not the reason that you're on the show. I have you on because you do therapy. That's why you're on Shrink to Shrink. So this is a shrink. This is a matter of fact. This is probably the original Shrink to Shrink, from my perspective. So when I'm growing up, when I was in high school, you were studying to become a therapist.
That's right.
Yeah. And so maybe that's where I got it. I don't know.
Well, do you remember the story about you coming to me at college and saying, Mom, I think I want to be a therapist? And I said, don't do that.
Oh,
I want you to be a teacher like your dad because you got good retirement, you got medical coverage, and you don't have to work nights and weekends, which therapists need to do when they're starting their work. And I knew you wanted a family. So you said, okay. And you went to school for a semester and you said, I tried it, Mom. It's just not me.
Sucks.
Yeah, sucks. And so you went back to being a therapist, and you've done very well. I was very proud of you.
Yeah, you're so practical. You know, it's like I could have come to you and said I want to be a rock star or an actor. Well, I did that for a while.
You did.
Well, I don't know if you could say I did it for a while. I tried.
You were available.
Yes, I made myself available.
You had great pictures.
Yeah, well, wonderful. And a lot of mileage on the car going into do the interviews. And
right,
like
Hollywood.
That. Yeah. But I think that actually formed a little bit of who I was because I had to be more extroverted. I had to put myself out there in a stranger in a strange land, driving into these, Inglewood and all these places where you're like, all right, I guess I got an interview somewhere in this building and find a place to park and get in and introduce myself. And, 16 years old, that's something that a 16-year-old doesn't do a lot of. I didn't have a phone to entertain me or anything. But you know what? There's another reason that you're here. And I do want to, I don't mind talking more about me, as long as you're here. I think, as Scott says, I'm done with talking about me. Now let's have you talk about me.
Yes, that's right.
Right. So, but there's a couple other reasons. We're going to do Inside Out. We're going to cover Inside Out, which is a throwback to the original, whatever month this will be, to the first one I did with Dr. Colleen Mullen. And you have written a book that is it breaks people apart into their different brain things and what their voices are and things like that. And I've used it a lot in therapy, and I've taught a lot of people how to do it. But now you've put it into a book form as an actual basically therapeutic intervention. I mean, what would you say? I mean, first of all, let me introduce the topic and where you guys can find it. It's called Healing the Fractured Soul, Ego Integration Therapy by Nancy R. Calkins, available on Amazon. Just search up that. And you decided to write this book because
I found out a method of doing a tool, really, of doing therapy that helped people and helped me as a therapist as well, because it's more interactive, it's more interesting, it's totally client-focused. It's just more fun. I learned it from transactional analysis, yada, yada, yada.
Okay, and Gestalt.
Yeah, which talks about various parts, the adult, the child, the parent, the critical parent, and the regular parent. I think they brought in nurturing parent later. And then Gestalt does stuff by sitting in chairs and moving, like if you're mad at your mother, you trade chairs. You put mom in a chair, and then you sit opposite mom, and then you talk to mom, and then you talk as if mom is talking back to you, and you have an interaction and do your therapy that way. So
is that how people become crazy? Is just by playing these different... your mom's not in that chair. Would you stop acting like she is? Do you see her? I don't see her. No, but it is. Notice it's a classic empty chair technique, right? You talk to a chair as though it had whatever person or... Yeah.
Yes.
But you've kind of integrated those two concepts with 5 different pieces. And like I said, we're gonna move it into Inside Out, and there's, I think, 5 different emotions, but that's not really what you're talking about.
No, it isn't. What I'm talking about is basic parts of ourselves that are voices like Inside Out, inside your head that are going on all the time. For example, your emotions are always available. You're always feeling ticked off or happy or something, curious, anything, also a whole range of emotions. So that's clumped into something called a feeling child. Okay. Then there is an adult. Most of us send our adult to work. Right. We leave the house and we put on our invisible suits.
We adult?
Yes, we adult ourselves.
Yes.
And go and fall into the regular social norms of our society, function well. Generally, we like ourselves as adults. We like the fact that we have limits and boundaries and we're clear. I'm going to tell a little story here. When you were 18, 19, I suddenly decided that Clea was also in the house as your older sister, 4 years older. Right. And so you were 19, she was in her early 20s, and both of you were in the house. And I said, wait a minute, I'm no longer the mother. I resign as the mother. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide up all the chores around the house. Everybody has to do them. If you don't do them, you put $10 in the pot. And when we get enough, we pay somebody to do it. Okay. Because I just resigned. You liked that clarity of having a boundary and making it very clear. I remember one time, I think I interviewed you for a panel of some kind. You said, yeah, I really like that stuff. It's all clear now. I know where mom is. I know what I can do, and if I don't do it, I know what's going to happen. Right. And that made it very clear. So that's what we like about ourselves as adults. We like to have those clear limits and boundaries.
The order and structure.
Order and structure. When we go to work, we say, okay, I will work 9 to 5, or I will work overtime and get paid, compensated for it. So that is a part of ourselves that really works. What happens, though, is when we leave work, we come home. And I swear to you, the minute we say home in our head, the feeling child jumps up and says, yeah, take me home.
Yeah,
and
I'm tired.
I'm tired. And I deserve my mommy and I want my food and yada, 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 yada. I've been good all day. Right. And so by the time we walk into the house, we are a feeling child. So it's a wonder to me that any marriage works. Yeah. Because if with 2 working adults coming home, you have 2 kids who are squalling.
Yeah, I literally had to tell myself, this is like shift 2. When I would drive into the driveway, I'm like, I'm not off work. This is my other job. And not like it's a job, but I got to set myself aside, my feeling child aside, because I'm walking into the house where I've got a wife and I've got 2 little kids, and there's no space for the feeling child yet. So it's like, all right, I'm coming into probably a parent role.
Yes, you're coming into a more nurturing parent, maybe.
Which is another part of, right? So we've got feeling child, we've got adult.
Right. Now we've got nurturing parent. Nurturing parent is the one who generally women turn out to the world in taking care of children or pets.
Other people.
Yeah, other people, focusing it all out. And so what we forget as women is how to turn that nurturing in on ourselves. And what happens was if we keep that nurturing parent focused out to the world, eventually we run out of gas. We don't have any stuff left. And so then we get resentful. And we wonder what's going on. Well, my process of therapy, I walk people through turning that nurturing parent in on themselves, becoming conscious. And that's what you're talking about, is you consciously made a decision to move from the garage into your house, not as a feeling child, but as an adult. This is all the process, basically, of doing therapy, of moving from unconscious behavior to conscious behavior.
That's
choice. That's the goal. Absolutely.
Choice. Right? I didn't have a choice. This is just who I am. Yeah. This is just the way I'm built. This is how I work. Up until now.
That's right.
Right? Until you become aware of the fact that, okay, this is a choice, right?
Absolutely.
And I would say it's a constant thing. Oh. And I think your feeling child is your indicator. Meaning that, okay, so it was probably a couple weeks ago that I was coming home, and my kids are older now, so it's not really that shift 2. When I come in, I'm like, is there anybody here? they're all off doing whatever it is that their interests are. So if you're like, oh yeah, hello. So and then I would talk to my wife, and she would be talking to me like regular. I wanted to say bombarding, because that's the way it feels,
Sure.
right? Because I'm home, I'm ready to kind of to take my foot off the gas pedal.
Well,
for
and
the
what have
day.
you been doing all day?
Yeah, talking and listening.
Yeah.
So then I said, oh, okay. So I realized my feelings were my indicator. I'm like, okay, this is just regular conversation. This is me, not her. I'm on edge. What do I need? Right? How do I nurture myself? Yes. And so I looked down and I saw, oh, the dog needs to be walked. Oh, there's my headset. I need some podcasts, just time. I just need 30, 40 minutes to walk around and transition, and I got something else done. So it's a constant like, okay, how do I nurture myself? What do I need so that I don't become a raving lunatic the moment I walk in the door? So I had to learn to nurture myself. So we've got feeling child, we've got adult, we've got nurturing parent, and there's two more.
Critical parent?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the critical parent. The one who lives inside, who tells you you are fat, lazy, awful. You shouldn't have said that.
Why do I just get shivers as you say this into a microphone, into my headphones? And my mother, no, you were great at that. I think you boosted my self-esteem quite a bit. I don't have a lot of critical parent, but I know a lot of people ride hot with it.
That was really a big mistake on my part.
What?
A big mistake. I cannot motivate this man with guilt. Listen to me, parents. Don't do it.
Oh,
Let guilt do its work.
Wait, do you want to raise a happy child or a compliant child?
Oh, I don't know. Compliant sounds awful good now.
From your perspective.
No, I think it was a choice, and I had to consciously make that choice over and over again.
Not to run my critical parent tapes too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had, but most people don't do that. Most people live in a pretty critical world internally between their own ears, which started in their youth from hearing it from the outside.
Exactly. And it runs constantly. And I watch clients, and I give them permission to take I have the cards labeled for critical parent. They sit in each place with these.
Back that up. Okay, because you are talking about the implementation of your therapy. So as we're going through these 5, which it's in the book, ego integration therapy, healing the fractured soul, right?
Yes.
Nancy Calkins. This is a plug for
just to be clear.
Yeah. Okay. So, but we're going through these 5 pieces of ourselves. But the way that you use it in therapy is each one of these parts of ourselves, the ego states, are printed out on a card, and it's 8.5 by 11 laminated, and it just has each one of these words: just adult, feeling child, playful child. Oops, I'm reading ahead. But each one of these on a card, and people set them in different places around the room, a couch, a chair, on the floor, whatever,
wherever
a shelf.
they're willing to sit is the assignment.
Yeah. So the ceiling fan, wherever it is, fish tank. So they put them around the room, and then they'll visit these parts of themselves and speak from that part.
Position.
Right. That's where the crazy part comes out. No, but I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm introducing it to a client,
yes,
I'll say, all right, this is where we start. I act like a therapist. Okay. This is, we're not just sitting and talking, but now we're doing this kind of interesting where we're pretending that different parts of you and you're sitting in different places and we're role playing. But it really works. There's something about
Isn't that amazing?
Moving around.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I imagine. I guess it just works, right? I mean, there's something about talking about something. Then there's doing.
Yes.
Then there's talking and doing.
Well, you know why? Because of learning styles.
Oh, tell me more.
Oh gosh, it gets
just a little.
It gets so complicated.
I know, but just a little bit.
Okay. Well, learning styles: auditory, visual, kinesthetic. You don't know basically what learning style your client is, but by using this moving around in the chairs, you have auditory going on, you have visual going on, and you have kinesthetic. Mostly education is not aimed at kinesthetic learning. So I find a lot of the people who really work with this are kinesthetic in background.
Okay, so I learned what I do.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we're moving around these parts. We still have inside out to get to, which apparently my mom has a big beef with. Stick around for that. She's so mean.
I am.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of mean, we've got critical parent. So let's review: feeling child, adult, We have
Nurturing parent.
Then we have critical parent. And last,
Playful child.
playful child. I love
Okay.
playful child.
I do too. And when people sit in that chair, very often I'll say, what does your playful child like to do? And they'll give me all sorts of answers.
Yeah. Sometimes I sit Indian style in the chair.
Oh, that's
Or
fun.
crisscross applesauce, I
Yeah.
guess is the more politically correct.
And it's so funny. People will take on the role the minute they sit in the chair.
If they have access to it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
something almost.
Have you ever run into somebody who didn't have access to
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, who doesn't have access to any of this?
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, yes, I've run into that where they only have critical parent. They don't.
Yeah.
But I've also run into people who have no idea what a playful child is. And it's
Yes,
usually
me too.
parents who were raised in a, we'll say a deficit environment. Let's say they had a bunch of kids, they're struggling with poverty, single mom, they're maybe the third or fourth. And there was no time. Every moment of the day had to be busy doing some act of what I would call survival, right? Are we worried about food? Are we worried about, putting food on the table? Are we worried about keeping the house clean? Are we, what watching your brother and sister? What are we worried about? So there was no play per se.
No freedom.
Right.
No
right.
safety. The issue is safety. You won't play unless you feel safe.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's really important. And because playful child is our access to sexuality, that has big meanings and connections.
So if you can't play, it makes your sexual life not good.
That's right.
Ah,
Because it's
I'm
not
talking
safe.
To my mother
You
about this.
you need a safe environment to have good sex. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, if you think about we'll say not recall because you're my mom, but let's say if you think about the way it's often played out in movies, right? You have this new romantic relationship.
Right.
What are they doing? They're running, they're skipping, they're hugging, they're laughing, they're playing.
Yes.
Right? That's the playfulness that gets you into the excitement,
courting, the
sexuality.
flirting.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's one aspect, but there's also all other kinds of aspects because I've known people who have a hard time playing, even in an amusement park or even at a soccer game or a baseball. They don't play.
No.
I don't know if they compete or what that alternative is, but they're not. There's no lightness to them around a card table or something like that.
Right. Well, another thing I've discovered, and your father taught me this, is that some people...
I don't want to know this. Okay.
So, not that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So that some people play with their heads and some people play with their bodies. No, in other words, don't go
You're
there.
still my
Do
mom.
not go there.
No, I know what you're saying. Intellectually,
Yes.
okay.
And so in our family, people play by using their heads, playing games, board games.
a quiz,
A puzzle.
yeah.
Now, we do get our brains fried by Dad with puzzles.
I
and
know
so
facts and
yes,
things.
much stuff we don't need to
And
know.
You know what I'm starting to do? Like when I meet a clerk at the store now, I'm telling them, I'm like, a guy took my zip code the other day. I'm like, do you know that the zip codes increase from East Coast to West Coast? And as you get closer to the West Coast, the numbers get high. He's like, oh, really? That's interesting. I'm like, no, it's not. And I shouldn't have said it. But that's something that my dad would do. And I can't blame him because I just said I'm 52 years old. But I'm doing that.
Welcome to the world of being raised by parents
who have pointless facts that you put on a podcast. All right, I get it. So that's play, different types of play.
Yes, and the other people who play with their bodies, who play games, running around football fields and skiing and
mountain bike,
and all that stuff.
Right.
So,
so those are the 5 parts. So what's the point?
Wait a minute, but do you want to leave out the other side of the
No,
play?
go ahead.
Okay, I gotta throw it in.
So those who don't have access to play, like we were talking about earlier,
Yes,
there is something they have instead.
That's right. On the back side of the card that says playful child, they turn it over and it says rebellious child.
Aha. So if we start with sexuality, it's easy to see rebellious child sexuality, right? Because they're basically, they have no feelings of sexuality, but they're using their nudity and their provocativeness, right? They're not connected. There's an emptiness in their eyes,
Yes. And this is where I say all the addictions are.
Oh, okay. So I don't know. I want to go out and I want to have a good time with my friends and we're going to do fun stuff, but I'm uncomfortable or I don't know how I would do that. So let me take a couple drinks and I'll get going. And then I'm good around people. And, I'm not as self-conscious. My critical parent isn't as loud.
You believe you're safer.
Right. Well, I don't care if I am, right? I just decide I'm going to venture out.
Risk. Yeah.
Right. And so then the addiction serves me to feel comfortable because then I can play. Gosh, you know what? He's so much fun when he's drinking. Right, that type of thing. We got to let's have him have a couple drinks before we get to the party because he's way better. Right, and that's where it flips the switch. There's so it could be addiction, but it could be a bunch of other things. Right? I mean, like I think about being in school. If I wasn't allowed to play in school, I was throwing spitballs or talking to my friends or kicking my friend's chair. That's the rebellion. That's playful to me. I feel it as playful, but when I'm actually doing it, it's considered to be rebellious.
The motivation is anger.
Yeah. Well, I don't get
is anger.
Yeah, I don't get to do what I want, so I'm gonna do what I want.
Right.
But not with permission.
Right.
Right. And
which could lead us back into the film with anger, but
that's part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what your book's about. It tells how to use it. It tells about a lot more details about all of this.
Oh yeah, and some client stories that I made up.
Yeah,
I added clients to
amalgams.
Clients.
They're amalgams.
Came out with
Yeah. That's where it has to be anyway.
Oh,
You don't want to weed your way through. This is the highlight version. So let's get into Inside Out. Overall, I thought it was a great vehicle.
Yes.
to spur on conversation. But you said it's limiting. Let's start by introducing one of the. Or actually, let's introduce all of Riley, who is our main character in Inside Out. If you hadn't seen it, go see it. But introduces all the different pieces that go on in her brain, and they're all feelings related. And I know Mom has some thoughts. Excuse me, Nancy Calkins, author of Ego Integration Therapy.
You do that so well.
Has some thoughts about it. And so, but let's introduce all the feelings first right here.
I'm sadness.
Oh, hello. I'm Joy.
Looks like you got this. Very good. Oh, that's her turn. Oh, look out!
That's Fear. He's really good at keeping Riley safe.
Easy, huh? Hi, back! Oh, we're good. Here we go. All right, open.
This looks new.
Think it's safe?
What is it?
Okay, caution. There is a dangerous smell, people. Hold on, what is that?
This is disgust. She basically keeps Riley from being poisoned, physically and socially.
That is not brightly colored or shaped like a dinosaur. Hold on, guys. It's broccoli!
Riley, if you don't eat your dinner, you're not going to get any dessert.
Wait, did he just say we couldn't have dessert?
That's anger. He cares very deeply about things being fair.
So that's how you want to play it, old man? No dessert? Oh, sure. We'll eat our dinner right after you eat this.
Wow. That's quite the whirlwind of different emotions, but
Yes,
and not particularly related to ego integration therapy. But what's your take? I thought it was great to see the thoughts and feelings portrayed up on screen, and I thought it was probably pretty helpful. But what was your take?
Well, the first question is, how old is Riley?
11.
Yeah. So it's set at that audience, and I guess I think of Disney as 4, 5, 7-year-olds.
Yes, they try to get them there.
So one of the few films made for adolescents or pre-adolescent. So I just didn't think they marketed it very well.
What do you mean?
Well, I just felt like when I was in the theater, there was a lot of little kids in there, and I thought, these little kids aren't going to get this.
Oh.
And it seemed to me to be going over their heads, and then the preteens weren't there because this was a Disney film and yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
And the parents aren't taking them to that. So it probably educated the adults more than anybody.
Yeah.
But they didn't market it well.
Right.
And, of course, I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute, you've got the feelings. Wait, that's stop.
Yeah, so it was,
and I've been looking for a time. I've held this book for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
So I'm sitting in the theater thinking, all righty then, it's time.
Ah, okay. So your thought about this was it's all feelings.
Yes.
They try to portray Joy as what I would consider the adult, right? The administrator of all of the different emotions, and everybody's lost without Joy,
Right.
Where she gets exiled at one point in the film. I don't know what happens to her, but her memory or everything gets muted, right?
Right.
She goes in kind of a depression.
Yes.
Because she's moved. She's having an adjustment disorder with this pressed
didn't
mood.
Riley end in a tank somewhere? She went to some valley where the what was it? There was a company. I don't remember what was accompanying her.
But basically, in her head,
a clown, maybe.
Sure, I'm sure there was a clown. So attacking her, holding her in the gutter.
No, that's the wrong.
That's a different movie. Yeah, Pennywise was not in this movie, Inside Out. But yeah, so basically she lost joy.
Yes.
Right. So we would say adjustment disorder with depressed mood. Right.
Very nice.
I mean, because she was moving.
Yes.
So she didn't have access to her joy.
Right.
And so, but this movie, it does have anger.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of disgust. Disgust is really interesting. I don't think about that as a central emotion.
Yeah. I think they meant to give it sadness. They gave it joy, fear, disgust, sadness, and anger.
Right. That seems.
I know.
Yeah, kind of limiting.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, you have to be able to categorize.
You gotta. Well, you get to pick.
Right.
Because you got a movie here.
There's only so many you got. But they're not just so shallow as just talking about the feelings. They actually go into something that I think is a rich world of therapy, and they go into core memories. So here you go with core memories.
But the really important ones are over here. I don't want to get too technical, but these are called core memories. Each one came from a super important time in Riley's life, like when she first scored a goal. That was so amazing. And each core memory powers a different aspect of Riley's personality, like Hockey Island. Goofball Island is my personal favorite.
Come back here, you little monkey.
Friendship Island is pretty good too. Oh, I love Honesty Island. And that's the truth. And of course, Family Island is amazing. The point is, the islands of personality are what make Riley, Riley.
When I first thought of therapy and I was first learning about it, I feel like we did a lot more talking about history and gathering all this information from the past and things like that. These core memories as represented in the movie Inside Out. And I don't know that I think I'm a lot more here and now. How are you functioning in the world and relationships? And yes, feelings and our history matter. And it's almost like you selectively cast your fishing line into the pool of history with your client, and you pull out different fish from this pool. Because there's obviously. Nobody remembers all of their history.
No.
So there's only these core memories. And sometimes those core memories bring us joy. Sometimes they bring us heartache. Sometimes they define who we are or who we think we are or should be. Mm-hmm. How much do you work current versus past in your either with this methodology or just generally in your practice?
Good question. I generally like to get back to family of origin for stuff for people so they can move more into that conscious behavior of saying, oh, I learned this. It isn't necessarily something I have to keep.
Okay. So not in my DNA. It's not who I am no matter what.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that they then have a conscious choice about, wait a minute, my dad said this, and then I turned it into my dad said I ought to be an athlete, and I'm not an athlete. So what do I do with that? Am I a loser then? Am I a girl then? What's my definition? And so then when we can go back to family of origin and consciously say, hey, wait a minute, that's not your message for you. That's your dad's message for you.
So again, going back to making the unconscious conscious.
Exactly.
These kind of these ways that we operate in the world without actually thinking about why or what motivates us behaving this way.
Right.
So, but again, we're fishing out these core memories and saying, all right, where do we learn that? Is that still true? Because I think a lot of who we start to develop as ourself, as it were, like who I am independent of anybody else and my family and then in relationship with them. And, how do I figure that out? We do that early on, and early on we're stupid. Right? I mean, right? If I think about, who myself at 20 or, 22 or 18 or 16, I started to develop who I think I am, right?
Yes.
And if I think about everything else I was doing at that time in my life, I'm not exactly making the best choices. So why would I continue to accept that version of myself when I feel like at 52, I'm more than twice as good as I was intellectually and just who I am in the world than when I was at 26.
Well, okay, then did you select your core memories? Can you now select core memories?
It's
once you're building on for the future.
Like in the movie Inside Out, actually, their sadness starts to touch some of the core memories and kind of infects them with sadness. So instead of being a happy memory of me having a good time, in the Riley situation, when she was having a good time with her hockey friends and whatever, now sadness has touched it, so it colors it to, oh, that was such a good time, and I don't have it now, right? So do I personally? Not in particular. I'm not making a lot of unconscious things conscious in my history, and recoloring because they don't plague me. What I do is I when those things pop up, those core memories that have a tinge of whatever regret or stupidity that I did in my youth, I
riding your motorcycle on the 405 freeway.
Oh, that was fun. In between all the in between all the cars.
I didn't know to the podcast.
Oh yeah,
so glad.
Yeah, you discovered a lot of things.
Yes, I did.
And now we're sitting together and looking at each other. Podcasts really they're not for people you know. They're for people you don't know, and then they come and sit and talk about their book, Integrated Therapy with whatever ego states. Blah, blah, blah. It's in the links in the description.
You know what is a favorite core memory of mine is the time when I took you with the Girl Scout troop. You always got taken with the Girl Scout troop.
I was a Girl Scout, yes.
And we went skiing. And we left the girls up there. And for some reason, you and I were in, I think, the VW bus coming home. And the chains broke. One of the chains broke and it flapped constantly. And I'm driving and you're in the back and I'm thinking, oh, I do not want to scare him the way I'm being scared right now. I have no idea what the heck these chains are doing. And they're going whap, 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 whap. And so I just said, okay, Courtney, let's sing.
Okay.
And you and I sang as loud as we could until we got to the place to take the chains off. So that, for me, is a core memory with you.
Yeah, no, and I don't have that memory at all. Although I do remember the song. It was something like, please, God, don't let us die. We don't want to fall off the cliff. Yeah, it was very calming. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thanks, Mom. It distracted me entirely. Yeah, so that is another interesting thing. You get together with people from your history, from your high school days, your college days, or your youth, or your parents, or whatever, and they have memories that I don't remember at all, right? I mean, you remember probably things from my childhood that I have no recollection of. Right. I remember things from my kids as raising them, which really makes me think, you know what, until they're like 8 or 9, just don't do anything with them because they're not going to remember.
That's true.
They're not going to remember.
Don't take them to Disneyland at 3, please.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, unless you're going to like play the videos for them, or show them the pictures. They don't have any.
But do you do that? Or do your pictures stay like Gaffigan says in your computer and you just have a computer full of pictures?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Although we do have, one of our computers runs with the gallery, so it plays the gallery as a screensaver.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's nice. Occasionally we'll look at it and we'll go, oh my gosh, I haven't seen these in a long time. So unless you're doing that, you're right. You don't really do it. But I guess it has to have value. Right. I mean, investing in your children's lives early on, right? Eyeball time with parents. Yeah. I mean, that's where we start to get these core memories, start to get this definition of who we are and how we should look at ourselves and how we should treat ourselves and talk to ourselves in our schizophrenic, nurturing, feeling, critical parent, playful adult world. So let's move on from core memories. You just being the therapist you are, you do deal with relationships, and sometimes us men we're not the greatest. And this is a clip from at the dinner table where mom has her conversation with Riley, that's all external, but then she has her internal voices, all her committee, we'll say, and then she calls on Dad and his committee, and you'll hear them. So let's check it out.
It was fine, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on.
She's never acted like this before.
That's
what
Mom.
should we do? We're going to find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband.
With a nice pass over the reed, comes across that right.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
He's making that stupid face again.
I could strangle him right now.
Signal him again.
So, Riley, how was school?
You gotta be kidding me.
For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot?
Boo! I'll be Joy.
School was great.
Okay, so being a married man myself for 26 plus years now, I would say that happens a lot, and I do try to tell Deb, my wife, that when she starts talking, sometimes she has to get my attention first, because just because I'm not like actually doing anything doesn't mean I'm like perched on the edge of my seat ready to listen. So she has to get my attention first, and I think that happens to a lot of us husbands. Do you see that?
Oh my word. It's just horrible. And we've been married 56 years.
Wow.
And we still make that mistake. You know, we'll be walking across, we have a smaller house, and so we can walk across the house, and we talk to each other from different rooms. And of course now with the hearing problems, that goes with it.
Yeah.
So
what?
he's yelling, what? And then he's coming and saying, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to say it for a third time. And I make the mistake of not saying to him, David.
Getting his attention
yes,
first.
Yes, exactly. And then getting the conversation started. So it takes me back to a sketch that Dad and I used to do about Elaine and Roger and Elaine. And Roger is thinking they're on a date, and Elaine is torturing herself with the emotions. Oh no, I think he must be thinking that I've done this and I've talked about the horse. He thinks I want, a hero on a horse now. And he's thinking, the script goes, and he's thinking, I had the oil changed about 3 months ago.
Exactly. Everybody's internal script and dialogue are all different, and I think this does a really good job because for about the first half of the movie, you're just in Riley's head. You're like, well, it all makes sense in Riley's head and all this other, and then they start to bring in, everybody has their own committee. Everyone has all these different parts. Oh my gosh. Because like in your therapy, so, when we talk to each other and in our closest relationships, we like you said, we arrive home and we've got our feeling child out and pour us. Yeah, what a rotten day or what a great day. You could come in high or low. It doesn't matter. But then that all of a sudden we're running into this, am I going to run to the adult? Am I going to run into the feeling child of my friend, partner, spouse, whatever it is?
And they coming in with a playful child, and you're like in the dumps.
Yeah, you're exactly. So sometimes we're talking through each other, and we're not in sync with each other. So because it's not like playful child, that's a great combo as long as you don't have to pay bills or get up and go to work or whatever. But critical parent to feeling child, that's dangerous, right?
Most couples live that way unconsciously.
Critical parent to feeling child?
Yes, they think that the critical parent is the adult. They haven't separated that. So they come in, they may have seen their parents function exactly like that because of previous generations. I know that's how my parents functioned as critical parent to feeling child. And of course they reversed the roles on different subjects.
Yeah, depending on the subject.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so educating, I think, and satisfying for me as a therapist to be able to say to people, yeah, that's the way it's been going. Now you have a choice to be adult to adult. And that's a totally different. My mother looked at our marriage after we started functioning more as adult to adult. She said, I've never seen anything like that.
Well, you know what? It also redefines the relationship insofar as, all right, it's easy to have a hierarchy. If you have I lead, you follow, and that's clear, right? That's why it works in employment settings. You know, it's like, you know, egalitarian is a nice concept, but it's much more difficult to manage.
Man. Absolutely.
So when you do that, aren't you giving up something though? If I'm the alpha, you know, if I want to, you know, share the alpha position with whoever it is I'm in relationship with, that makes it much more complicated, right?
Yes, it is more complicated. Are you talking about the alpha as an adult?
Yeah, basically. It's like if, you know, instead of having an alpha and a beta, you have two alphas, or sharing the alpha where you're both partners.
But adult doesn't necessarily mean that you are top dog, the alpha. It means that you're coming from reason versus emotion.
Right, the right way.
Yeah, theoretically.
in my most humble thinking.
Yes, theoretically.
Non-emotional male way. Yes, of course, the right way. But no, because we'll see, and that's where my flawed thinking is, right? Because I think the adult is the one that makes the decisions, but that's not it at all, right? People are making decisions out of emotion and fear all the time, right? Or at a critical. I'm going to do this to spite this situation, or in spite of, right? I'm gonna lose 10 pounds just to show them.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's not the adult leading.
No, it is not an adult decision at all.
Right. So that's where my errant thinking was. Of course, it's the alpha, the adult. We're sharing the adult because the adult's the one that makes the decisions. Not always.
No.
Okay. So in the movie Inside Out, I think it takes a real stab at showing the value of different emotions, right? Because we want to think about happiness as being the emotion we always want to have, and sadness is an emotion we don't want to have, right? We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it well without becoming a martyr and obnoxious to all the people around us. And we also don't want to do it in a way that it hurts other people. We don't see the value in it. In Inside Out, they really, let me just get to it, and then we can talk about it.
Sadness. Mom and Dad, the team, they came to help because of sadness.
We have to get back up there.
Joy was stuck down here. We might as well be on another planet.
Okay, so the crux of that clip is that Joy, really Riley, realizes that she allows her sadness to come out, which she has been fighting, right? She wants to pretend to be happy all the time. But historically, when she has let her sadness come out, it actually created a different dynamic in the relationship from the people around her, because it could activate, in your scenario, other people's nurturing parent to come in, and we are a community, right? If we try to exist just on our own, you know, I love, honestly, Mom, what you said at your 50th, you know, you said, hey, when we got married, we said it was for better or worse, for sickness and health. And you said, at this point, it's probably going to be more sickness and health. You know, it's like, so that rang home so true with me that, look, we partner because sometimes we need someone to help take care of us. Sometimes we need someone to help support us emotionally. Sometimes it's financially. Sometimes it's relationally. I mean, there's all these things that we're better in community and better to be partnered for. And that's true for all the emotions we have, and we got to lean on other people at different times. We can't just be an independent emotional sanctuary. You know, sometimes we need to show what's really going on with us, and if people reach out and help, that's great. You know, but if you never do it, if you never had a need, people will never be able to nurture you in the way that is helpful.
Well, and one of the hardest things, I think, for people to learn is how to receive.
Oh, it's out of control. I point that out all the time. I'm
yes.
Like, I love giving gifts. I'm like, yeah, well, you like to be in control, and it's out of control to be able to receive. It sucks to be able to receive.
That's true.
I mean, it sucks to receive.
Right. And so that sadness opens up our vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And that is the scary part about sadness. I had a professor, you and I went to the same school, which was fun. Mm-hmm. I had a professor who said at the time, learn to mourn. It's what life is made of.
Loss, change. Any change is a loss.
Change, yeah.
Yeah. And so we got to learn to mourn, right? To me, one of the things that I think that foils people, and I don't know how it fits with your integration therapy Is that what it's called? I keep getting it wrong.
Ego integration.
Ego. Sorry. Can I have the book? 'Cause it's behind the computer screen. I've lost track of it. Found a plug. I got to plug correctly. Healing the Fractured Soul, Ego Integration Therapy by Nancy Calkins. Available on Amazon everywhere. One of the things that I think actually foils people is that they believe their life and their relationships are supposed to go a certain direction. And what I mean by that is basically expectation. Like, if, it's easy to say, oh, just don't have any expectations and life will be fine. I prefer to look at it like this is the chapter that's being written of my life, which kind of has the same outcome. But like the other night when I was driving to pick up Seth, and I'll tell the story next time on the Quadcast, so tune into the Quadcast, about my son hopping a fence and getting 18 stitches and the whole thing. My night was not going to go like that, right? And the other day I went shopping, and I did what I needed to do, and I was getting back into the car, and my car didn't start. I'm like, oh man. So, because I had a bad battery, and I'll tell that story. But then I'm waiting for my friend to help me out. And so I open up a soda, and it just spills all over the front of me. And I'm like, a lot of times people, and I honestly thought this, I didn't have this big emotional reaction. I thought a lot of people would say, oh, this is a terrible day. I just did this, and that didn't work. I spent money on that. And then I end up stuck in a parking lot and out in front of the Halloween store, and everybody's there, and blah, blah. Yeah. But I was like, okay, well, that's just another thing. It's not going to stain because it's just carbonated water. But you know what I mean? It's like I didn't foil myself with the expectation that this is the way the day is going to be, ought to be. And by the way, anything that goes wrong, it's messing up my day. No, things are always going to go wrong.
Absolutely.
Things are always going to change on you. So change is the norm, but I think people want to hold on to the fact that things ought to go this way, or my life should go this way, or this person ought to behave that way in response to what I do.
That's the critical parent.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it gets in the way all the time.
All the time.
Because nothing goes as expected, right? I mean,
no.
when will my problems end? Never.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's always gonna be part of.
Absolutely.
But people, so how do you help people get to the place where they go, where that automatic thought is not one of, well, a critical parent?
Well, it's not up to me. It's for them to get into that adult more and more, so they realize how satisfying it is to be able to be an adult, to make a choice with what they do with their emotions, and that is maybe the beauty of this movie, Inside Out, is that it displays that emotions can be changed and challenged. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the benefit of the film.
Right.
And so that's the same thing with the therapy, is how are you going to manage your emotion? Which part of you is going to choose to handle the emotion, and which emotion is coming up, and what are you going to do with it?
Okay, so another beauty of operating and making decisions from your adult is that when I treat people a certain way, I treat them like an adult, whether they're presenting their adult or not. Mm-hmm. I realize what's their choice. It's like, okay, here's where I go from this point.
Yep.
This is as far as I can go. And an adult will pick up the ball and go from there. Mm-hmm. Or an adult will have different expectations of me, and or whatever. And I guess it's the adult, but it also needs to be communicated well to someone else. And I think that's where a lot of times we fall short. It's like, I can look like an a-hole, but I feel like I'm acting like an adult, but I'm not communicating well. Do I tell everyone? I'm like, well, I'm a feeling child. I'm a this, I'm a that. I mean, do you have to, how do you make it different in your real world?
Well, most of this happens on a very unconscious level. That's the beauty of using this tool, is that I watch them as they have maybe done this once, and they go out and they come back in the next week or so and say, oh my gosh, I did things I've never done before. And I said no to this person, and I didn't have to be mean about it. I didn't have to be anything. I didn't have to explain myself. I just said, no, I'm not available to do that. Some guy was hitting on me, and I said, no, thank you very much. And one of my clients would say, I never act like that before. I'd get all huffy, I'd get all mad, or I'd get all hurt, or I'd succumb because I didn't want to not please
resist,
him.
Yeah.
So it's fun to watch that. So it works on an unconscious level. I don't do any instruction about how to do this. They take it into their own being and make it real for themselves.
So once they learn the pieces, they have access to them, and they can pull them up and say, "Oh, this is my yes and this is my no," or "I'm doing this out of guilt. I'm doing this out of trying to nurture somebody else when let them nurture themselves." You know?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, but we can't always, like, I can't look at my 3-year-old and go, "Hey, brush it off. Where's your adult?" Right? Because and even as we talk about the teenagers that I have and that I was in your home, they don't have that. It's, if they do, well, they do have a kind of a seedling of an adult in there.
They can start doing this about 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. They will be able to recognize parts of themselves at that age.
So then the adult must take on different phases too, because my adult when I was 22 is a lot different than my adult when I'm 52.
Absolutely. There's a maturity that goes on
to all the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just get them mature.
I guess anything you practice too, right? If you get really good at your critical parent, you'll have an amazing critical parent.
Oh, you will indeed. And you will be miserable.
Yeah. You'll be making yourself.
And making everybody miserable around you.
Yourself and everybody.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to the last piece, there is, and maybe we can talk about this, and it's actually a natural lead into the fact that you said when can they start understanding these different pieces.
All right, here you go. Your new expanded console is up and running.
Oh, wow. Cool. Upgrade.
Hey. Oh, whoops. Wait, did I just do that?
Hey, guys, what's puberty? I don't know. It's probably not important.
Whoa. I have access to the entire curse word library. This new console is done.
Sorry, I did it again. My bad.
You're getting to the rink.
So I'm not going to ask you to tell puberty stories of mine. Or actually, I am going to ask you not to. Although I don't feel like we've talked enough about me on this episode.
Probably not.
Yeah. So will you come back and talk to me about me? Let's have you remember me some
I have
more.
poetry about you.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I do.
Who doesn't? Okay. So puberty, obviously, I would say, like you were talking about, that they marketed it wrong. You don't want to. This movie is not for 11 and under, right? I mean, it's not for them,
right?
But it's just not aimed at them, because puberty changes everything, right? Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
I always say teenage girls, they're crazy, and teenage boys, not that much better. They're just different in their crazy.
Yes.
So all of these parts exist, like once in a while I'll look at my wife, and when the kids do something that's like over the top emotionally, like they should react on a 3 and they react on a 10, and we look at each other as they storm out of the room. I'm like, you know what, honey, really, this is, first of all, they're on steroids. They're on natural steroids, so these hormones are going through the roof, and so, but also this is the first time in this size of body that they have with this dose of hormones that they felt this emotion, right? They felt this at 3, but what are they going to do? Throw a toy?
Right.
Now they've got these big bodies and this big emotional surge, and they have no idea what to do with it or how to manage it. Mm-hmm. And because they're in these larger bodies, we think, oh, well, they should know how to manage this. No, but this is a brand new emotional response. They've never had one like this before. So they're babies in the emotional realm.
Right. They're 2-year-olds. It's a repeat of 2.
Well, yeah, and it's often said, but if as you dive deeper into it, those are the reasons why, because they've never been told no and felt like this before, so it's just, oh my gosh, they're crazy. So, one more piece, Mother, this book, Healing the Fractured Soul, Integration Therapy,
by Nancy
Calkins. This, like you said, was a lifetime development, and now that it's out there, that's it, you're done, you're gonna die. That's it, your love letter to the world. All right, goodbye, signing off now. We are out of here. No, do you feel like there's something else coming, or is it just you just want to get the good word out?
Yeah, I want to get it out to as many people as I can. What I want to do is I want to continue to train therapists. Okay. I've done 2 workshops now with local therapists. I've trained therapists in 2 agencies and give them the tools to do this. And I just trained somebody yesterday. It was really fun. to help them to begin to use this tool effectively, because some people are using it like to prepare people for EMDR. Because they get in touch with it. It seems to help to be an introduction to EMDR. So that's a cool thing.
Yeah, and I've worked with this and talked to other people, taught therapists basically how to use it, and pretty much everybody kind of gets it and can use it pretty well. And especially when you're talking about interns who are starting out, they're like, what do I do with people? Maybe their questioning isn't quite as down pat, in their interview skills and assessment skills. This is something that they can use and feel like they've given something to the client, because the client does a lot of the work in this. I would say the main thing that people have to learn is to hear the different voices, because as I train people, they'll say, oh, well, this is the adult. I'm like, no, that's not the adult. So they just have to learn the difference between the different roles or different voices that we have in our head, ego states. So, is that one of the main things? Because even at the training that I was in of your training, there were therapists who were talking, they're like giving scenarios. I'm like, nope. Back up. That's not that voice.
That's right.
So is that the main thing?
So that's the learning process of the therapy, is coming back after the first time you're introduced to it, and then working for a while with a client and helping them sort out the critical parent from the adult and the feeling child from the playful child, and separating all those voices and getting them real clear in their head. Then you can do what I call a conscious layout, where you put the adult in charge as the administrator of the whole committee, as the movie refers to it, inside yourself. So that is really the pinnacle of what happens with ego integration therapy, is that you can consciously choose how these are all going to interact.
Wow. Yeah, it has been. It's also very powerful in language, meaning that once the clients know it, and so if you teach it to a couple, they can say, oh, I'm in my feeling child, I'm coming at you this way. If at some point they can start to use that, it's kind of freeing, because you get to see these parts of yourself and go, wait, we both need to put on our adult for this one right now. Okay, let's do that. So it can be very powerful. So if people want to get a hold of you, what's your Twitter handle? Are you on Instagram?
Oh, you are such a...
No? You don't have that?
You're lucky I have email, and that's... No, I do have a website.
Do you? What's your website?
HealingTheFracturedSoul.com.
Oh, HealingTheFracturedSoul.com. Very good.
It's really pretty, too. I'm very excited about it.
All right. Well, we'll have to
We're starting
to
play with that.
Okay. So keep checking back there. More things to come. If you want to get a hold of my mother, feel free to hit me up. I'll get you to her. I'll put you in contact with her if you have questions, thoughts, critiques, things that she could have done better as a mom, which I'm sure are all very relevant now. They're out on the table, Mom. People are going to say, why the heck did you make Courtney with no sense of guilt? It's pathological. We can't guilt him into anything. He's a really independent cuss. His adult is too
Deborah probably
strong.
hates me.
She does. But it's the man she married up until now. But now I have a choice, and I can choose to, and I ain't doing it. All right. Thanks for coming on, Mom. It was great. Healing the Fractured Soul, Ego Integration Therapy by Nancy Calkins, available on Amazon.com, and go check it out. You'll learn a lot more about how to apply this therapy, and even you should do it through a therapist, because it really helps, but even just reading about it can provide some insight.
Yeah, my neighbors are telling me I'm embarrassed that they're just out there reading it, and they're just calling me and saying, hey, I really like this.
They get feedback. That's the old-fashioned way of Twitter, where people reach out through a telephone and they punch in the numbers and they call and talk to you. I'm not giving out your number, Mom, but thanks for coming on the show, and we'll have you on another Quadcast to talk more about me, please.
Of course.
All about me.